Welcome back to the channel, you curd nerds. We are down to episode 2 of Pilot's Handbook of Aeronautical Knowledge broken down in plain English. I know every document the Federal Aviation Administration puts out is a really good way to go to sleep. I don't even use melatonin. I just crack open the FAASTeam and next thing you know, 3 minutes later, I'm out. But that's why this podcast exists, so that we can break down these documents, we can break down these textbooks in easily digestible chunks, break them down Barney style, so that when you go in for your check ride, you're not going in blind. You've got it broken down. Somebody explained it to you in a way that makes a little bit more sense. And if you do like this kind of content, make sure hit that bell icon so you get notified every time we come out with another episode. Make sure you are subscribed, and if you've got any questions, please don't hesitate to leave them in the comments. What we're covering today is the role of our favorite alphabet soup organization, is the Federal Aviation Administration. Now, I know we make jokes, we call them the Friends Against Aviation, but they're doing stuff to try and make sure that everybody's safe, right? They want to make sure that everybody's following the rules. They want to make sure that aircraft are out there operating safely, and they don't go after your favorite YouTuber for buzzing somebody's house for no reason, right? The FAA doesn't make rules up as they go. Their power comes from the Code of Federal Regulations, specifically Title 14, which covers aeronautics and space. This is the rule book for everything in civil aviation, whether you're going to be a student pilot, maintain a Piper Cherokee, or slap some Garmin avionics into your panel. Title 14's got something to say about it. So within Title 14, Chapter 1 is where the Federal Aviation Administration lives, and it's divided into subchapters A through N. For us in the cockpit, the things that are most important until you get to the airline, or unless you're opening up a flight school, it's going to be Part 61, Part 91, and Part 43. So Part 61, this is pilot certification. This explains how you're going to get your certificate, the training standards, the things that you have to accomplish before you can be signed off for your check ride. And it's broken down by what certificate you're going for. If you're a student pilot, what's the requirements for that? If you are a private pilot, or you're going to get your private pilot certificate, what's the requirements for that? So if you are going through your training and your instructor's like, hey, you need to get XYZ hours, or you need to do XYZ maneuvers, Part 61 is going to be the reg that covers that. Part 91, this is general operating and flight rules. You can think of Part 61 as how you get your certificate, and Part 91 is how you lose it. Part 91 is things like don't operate too low, make sure that your airplane's in good working order, check the weather before you take off. Everything that pertains to general operations of a civil aircraft operating, for the most part, as an individual or as a private entity, is covered under Part 91. Now, Part 43, this is maintenance and how to keep your airplane flying legally and what you are and aren't allowed to do as a pilot to your airplane. There's a whole appendix that has a whole list of stuff that a pilot is allowed to do when maintaining their airplane. Not everything's got to be done by an airframe and power plant mechanic. The list is actually pretty extensive. It includes things like replacing fuel lines or repairing skin on your aircraft, as long as it doesn't impact the aerodynamic qualities or lifting properties of the aircraft. Most people wouldn't be comfortable doing something like that, but make sure you know these parts before you start heading into your check rides, or else you're pretty much going in blind. Now, where is the Federal Aviation Administration based? And no, it's not in your hangar. All right. The FAA headquarters, it's in Washington, D.C., but they've got folks all over the country. The two big field facilities are Mike Monroe Aeronautical Center in Oklahoma City. This is where the FAA handles training, logistics, safety support. If your medical got deferred for some reason or another, it probably went to Oklahoma City. And then you've got William J. Hughes Technical Center. This is where they test new air traffic control systems, comms, navigation, safety software, and more. This is really where they train a lot of people. right? If you've ever wondered who figures out how to make ATC radar better, it's probably going to be somebody there. Next, we've got your local FAA presence. These are the field offices. This is the Flight Standard District Office, or FSDO. There's about 80 of these across the country. You've probably got one within about an hour to 2 hour drive of you, right? FSDOs, they handle accident investigation, pilot certification and renewals, and oversight of flight schools and air carriers and maintenance operations. So each FSDO, it's going to be staffed with some aviation safety inspectors. These are certified professionals responsible for administering and enforcing FAA safety regulations across multiple facets of civil aviation. In layman's terms, they're the ones that are enforcing the rules. These inspectors specialize in evaluating the production, operation, maintenance, and modification of aircraft. They conduct inspections related to aircraft manufacturing, aircraft airworthiness, operational procedures, and even cabin safety. ASIs play a central role in pilot certification, ensuring candidates meet the required standards. Aviation safety inspectors are the ones that oversee your local designated pilot examiner. To become an ASI, inspectors need to complete a pretty rigorous training program from the FAA in Oklahoma City, covering everything from airman evaluation to pilot testing techniques. In addition to this foundational training, ASIs receive comprehensive on-the-job training and instructions and are required to participate in ongoing recurrent training to maintain their technical currency and effectiveness. The FAA currently has about 3,700 ASIs nationwide working at FSDO offices. If you've got any question about certification, testing, or anything aviation safety related, your local FSDO and their ASIs should be your first call. And don't be afraid to call your local FSDO. They are incredibly friendly. I know when I lost my medical about 2 years ago, me and my wife still flew our airplane because my wife's a qualified pilot. She's qualified to operate our aircraft. So I would sit as passenger princess. Doesn't mean I wouldn't manipulate the controls, but I would sit as passenger princess. My wife would sit and act as pilot in command, and we would still go fly our airplane. Well, I posted a video on YouTube of me manipulating the controls with my wife in the airplane, and somebody decided to report me to the Federal Aviation Administration for what they claimed was acting as pilot in command without a medical certificate. The local FSDO called me. We discussed the whole scenario. We discussed the whole situation. And they were incredibly friendly and respectful the entire time. Obviously, because I didn't do anything wrong. I wasn't acting as pilot in command. But Mike at the Milwaukee FSDO, great individual. So I definitely recommend, if you've got any questions, don't hesitate to reach out and talk to your local FSDO and their ASIs. Next up, we've got the FAA Safety Team, or FAASTeam. Now, we can make a joke saying these are the safety nerds, but the FAA used to run on something called an aviation safety program, and it did its job so well that they shut it down, and now we've got the FAASTeam. The FAA Safety Team, what's their goal? It's to fix tougher safety problems. They work by offering online safety courses, hosting webinars and seminars, and partnering with CFIs and DPEs to build a stronger safety culture. Each region of the United States has a regional FAASTeam manager, and you can find their resources, join safety programs, or register for courses at FAASafety.gov. And these people, they come out to flight schools. They talk to instructors. They talk to students. I know when I was an instructor at UND, I think we'd have a meeting with the FAASTeam like once every 6 months. And they would come out and tell us what students are doing well, what students aren't doing well, what we can do to make our students safer. And it was great. It was great. So let's say that you need help from the FAA. Let's say that something's going on and you just don't know the answer. Well, call the FAA. Yeah, they answer the phone. Their medical department's a little backed up, so it might take you a little while to get somebody on the phone. But if you need the FAA's help, you do have options, right? Initially, right off the bat, you could call 1-866-TEL-FAA. That's a line that's open 24/7. If you think that somebody's operating unsafely, if you think that somebody's operating without a medical, if you think that somebody has damaged an airplane and didn't tell somebody about it or didn't report it properly, if you think somebody intentionally took an aircraft into the mountains with no gas, full well with the intention of crashing it into those mountains and jumping out of it with a parachute, all to make a video sponsored by Ridge Wallet, That's the people you're going to call, is 1-866-TEL-FAA. You can also just go to the FAA.gov website. You can even use the contact links for your local FSDO on their website, which is probably going to be the quickest way to get an actual person to return some correspondence, to return a call or return an email and actually talk to you. Then, if all else fails, snail mail is always an option to the FAA headquarters at 800 Independence Avenue, Southwest, Washington, D.C., 20591. But pro tip, call your FSDO. The folks are helpful, especially if you're respectful. Do not call them all pissed off because a DPE failed you. Do not call them mid-rant because your medical got deferred. The people that really can deal with those things, like a deferred medical, are the ones in DC or Oklahoma City. If you've got questions about, hey, I am not certified to fly a seaplane, but my airplane is a flying boat and it flies on the ground normally. Can I actually fly this airplane legally without a seaplane rating? Those are going to be the people that you'll call. Now, the FAA, as we know, has a bunch of reference material and the books that you're actually going to need. So let's talk through the books that are really important for now. We talked about the Federal Aviation Regulations. Now, the second half of that book is known as the Aeronautical Information Manual, or the AIM. This is going to be your go-to guide for operating the National Airspace System. The AIM isn't regulatory, but it's packed with best practices and essential knowledge. It covers everything from basic flight information and air traffic control procedures to pilot and medical certification guidance, navigation and communication procedures, emergency protocols, and even some meteorological data interpretation. It also includes the Pilot Controller Glossary, which it's going to help you sound like you actually know what you're talking about on the radio. Think of the AIM as the FAA's polite way of saying, we'd prefer you do it this way. Then we have the Pilot's Handbook of Aeronautical Knowledge. That's what this series is based on. Every pilot should go through and read this book and understand what's in it. Then we've got the Airplane Flying Handbook. This is go-to tips and instructions for the maneuvers that you'll be expected to perform on many of your check rides. Now, this book is not aircraft specific, so please make sure you refer to your pilot's operating handbook or your flight instructor for more details than this book can actually provide. Next one up is going to be your Instrument Flying Handbook and Instrument Procedures Handbook. These two handbooks form the backbone of IFR training. The Instrument Flying Handbook focuses on the fundamentals of flying solely by reference to instruments. It covers control and performance concepts, basic attitude instrument flying, partial panel techniques, and the integration of instrument scanning skills. It explains the use of primary flight instruments, navigation systems, and autopilot features. Meanwhile, the Instrument Procedure Handbooks picks up where the Flying Handbook leaves off. It has detailed instructions on how to interpret IFR procedures, such as standard instrument departures, standard terminal arrivals, instrument approach procedures. It dives into holding patterns, missed approaches, obstacle departure procedures, and RNAV routing. These two resources together are essential for understanding how to operate legally, efficiently, and safely in the instrument environment. But they are not a replacement for actual flight instruction. Then we have the Aviation Instructor's Handbook. This handbook is the essential playbook for anyone looking to become a certified flight instructor or just trying to stay current. It's packed with foundational material required to understand about the psychology of learning and the science of instruction. The FAA built this manual to guide instructors through key concepts such as the characteristics of effective teaching, learning theory like behaviorism versus cognitive theory, barriers to learning, lesson planning, evaluation methods, risk management strategies, and last but not least, professionalism. It also addresses the human factors, communication skills, and how to adapt teaching styles to different types of learners. Even experienced instructors can find themselves flipping back through this book to refine their techniques and stay sharp. It's not just about passing your CFI check ride, it's about becoming a lifelong aviation educator. I've got a physical copy of that book sitting back there on my bookshelf right now. And every time I run into a student that I'm struggling to get information to, that I see that the student isn't prepped for their check ride or isn't prepped for the next part of their aviation training, and I can't seem to figure out how to get them over that hump. I can't seem to figure out how to get them over this learning plateau. I'm going to crack open my instructor's handbook and figure out if there's any techniques that I need to brush up on, instead of just saying, well, the student sucks. I guess not everybody's built to be a pilot. Now, there's also pilots' operating handbooks and advisory circulars. And advisory circulars is what we're about to cover next. So, have you ever seen something like AC 6165 Echo and went, what is that? I don't know what that is. Well, if you're just starting as a student pilot, probably not. I know I hide advisory circulars from my fresh under 10 hour students because we don't really need to dig into all those details just yet. But advisory circulars are the FAA's way of providing guidance on how to understand and comply with federal aviation regulations without making it a legal requirement. So think of them as the FAA's version of a cheat sheet or annotated manual. They're officially non-binding, which means you're not legally obligated to follow them, but they present one or more acceptable methods for complying with the rules in Title 14 CFR, or the FAA. In practical terms, if you follow the guidance in the advisory circular, you're probably doing it right. The FAA will nod approvingly if they come knocking. Advisory circulars are used to clarify complex or vague parts of the regs, standardize procedures, or harmonize U.S. practices with international standards, and they are even used to respond to concerns from pilots, mechanics, or other stakeholders. They range from multi-page technical manuals to one-page memos. For example, Advisory Circular 6165 covers how to properly endorse a student pilot's logbook, while others might explain how to set up ADS-B out equipment correctly. Following them helps you stay ahead of the curve and out of the FAA's enforcement crosshairs. But how are they set up? When you read those numbers, Advisory Circular 61-65 Echo, what does that mean? Well, the first set of numbers is the related CFR. So 61 is Part 61, Certification of Pilots. The second number is the document sequence. Pretty much how many advisory circulars have they put out that fall under this part? The last one, the echo or the letter, that is the revision. So 61, 65 echo, there's been A, B, C, D, 4 other revisions before it. You can find all of the FAA's advisory circulars on faa.gov/regulations_policies/advisory_circulars. NOTAMs. Now let's talk about NOTAMs, or notices to airmen, notices to air mission, depending on when you're listening to this podcast. These are time-sensitive, flight-critical updates that contain information that you won't find on your sectional, in your GPS, or scribbled on whiteboards at your local FBO. They're used to communicate sudden or temporary changes that could affect the safety or legality of flight, like a closed runway, malfunctioning nav aids, VIP movement, temporary flight restrictions, and even something obscure like a flock of geese loitering in mid-downwind. That one's not very common. NOTAMs fall into a couple different categories, right? You've got a NOTAM D. This is the most common. This covers everything from lights being out on your VASI or PAPI, taxiway closures, unlit towers, or maintenance personnel working near a runway. Then you've got FDC NOTAMs. These are flight data center and are regulatory in nature. They include things like temporary flight restrictions, changes to procedures, amended instrument approaches, or updated charts that haven't been published yet. You've got pointer NOTAMs. It's basically a highlighter. These point to another NOTAM, drawing your attention to the one you shouldn't miss. There's military NOTAMs. These apply to military airfields or activities, and they could affect civil traffic. Then you've got bird TAMs, snow TAMs, ash TAMs. These are special international NOTAMs about birds, snow, volcanic ash hazards. You might not see these unless you're operating near an affected area or flying international, but they are part of the ICAO lexicon. NOTAMs use standardized formatting with keywords like RWY for runway, TWY for tower, OBST for obstruction, NAV for navigation, COM for communication, and more. You can quickly scan and understand what's being affected. They're written in all caps and what I call the FAA Morse code English. So you'll want to practice reading them. And again, if you look through the Pilot's Handbook of Aeronautical Knowledge, they have a nice little key on how to break it down. Or if you open up Garmin Pilot will decode them for you. But you can get NOTAMs in a couple different places. You've got pilotweb.nas.faa.gov, you've got fltplan.com, and aopa.org. But again, your electronic flight bag like ForeFlight or Garmin Pilot should have access to these. But do not skip NOTAMs during your pre-flight planning. Remember, I didn't know the runway was closed won't get you very far with a ramp check or an insurance claim. There is an example of a story of I think it was a Piaggio that ended up landing on a glacier near Iceland or Greenland. And the reason they didn't make it to a runway is because they didn't check the NOTAMs that told them that the altitude way up high that they wanted to operate at was currently unavailable due to military use. So they continued on with the flight anyway at a lower altitude, burning more gas, and they ended up not getting to their destination. Do you think the FAA or their insurance was happy about that? No. So make sure, check your NOTAMs before you ever even get to the airplane. Last little thing that we're going to talk about is SPANCE. This is the FAA sending you emails letting you know about safety-related information. So it's the Safety Program Airman Notification System. It's replacing the old postcard system, and it lets you sign up for in-person seminars and online events. I just checked it today, and it's currently out of service. So hopefully they get that system back up and going soon. And that's really the role of the FAA. That's how they keep people safe. That's how they keep people in line. So if you've got any questions, again, please don't hesitate to leave them in the comments down below. If you're afraid of asking a question in a public manner because you think somebody's going to roast you, don't be afraid to send me a DM. I try to answer all of them. If I don't respond to them, you can always contact me at flyingwithcheese@gmail.com. Now, the next episode we're going to be covering is how do we define what aircraft is what? Is it a blimp? Is it a glider? Is it a balloon? Is it a dirigible? Is it either way? That's what we're covering on the next episode. So be on the lookout. And as always, fly safe and keep it cheesy.